Okay, let's dive in. It's been quite a week in the news, hasn't it? Global shifts, domestic debates. It's a lot. Here at the Deep Dive, we've sifted through all those sources you sent, really dug in to pull out the key insights, cut through the noise so you feel genuinely informed, not swamped. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a whole stack of articles, research notes, focusing on the big global and U.S. news from July 23rd, 2025. Think of it as your pathway, maybe, to understanding what's shaping things.
Exactly. And we'll try to connect the dots, between things that might seem separate, explore the implications, highlight those surprising facts that stick. The goal really is context and clarity, not just what happened, but crucially, why it matters, and maybe what comes next.
So, looking at these headlines, what really jumped out at you? We've got major trade deals, environmental policy shifts, humanitarian crises, even some, unexpected cultural moments. Let's get started. Okay, first up, global diplomacy and that economic chessboard. On July 23rd, Ukraine passed a pretty contentious reform. It affects their anti-corruption agencies.
Right. And Ukraine's been actively seeking EU membership since, 2014? So this is significant. And the EU reaction was, well, immediate and strong. Leaders warned this reform undermines democratic standards, the very standards needed for membership.
Yeah, I saw that Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission president,
Right.
and officials from Germany, France, all echoing that.
Exactly. They're urging revisions. It's quite direct feedback.
But on the flip side, President Zelensky defended the law, though he did promise amendments within 2 weeks.
He did. But even with that promise, it's already sparked, domestic protests, backlash from civil society groups.
So what's the bigger risk here for Ukraine then? Is it just about this law?
Well, that's a really sharp question because it's more than just one law, isn't it? It's about this fundamental tension. Ukraine's urgent wartime needs versus the EU's insistence on institutional integrity, this controversy. It could seriously risk delaying their EU accession progress. And critically, their aid support. It shows how internal politics can have these, outsized impacts internationally.
Okay, shifting gears from geopolitics to the global economy. July 23rd also saw a big breakthrough. A new U.S.-Japan trade framework.
That's right. Key terms. U.S. cuts tariffs, from 25% down to 15%?
Yeah, and Japan commits to investing. This
Yeah.
number is huge. $550 billion in the U.S. economy over several years. Massive.
It really is. And the market reaction, very positive pretty much across the board. U.S. indices saw noticeable gains, S&P up 0.8%, Dow 1.1%.
And in Japan?
Nikkei jumped over 3%, a one-year high. Toyota shares alone were up 14%. But the deeper insight here, I think, is that this isn't just about tariffs. It feels like a strategic realignment, using economic cooperation to, strengthen alliances, signal a shift in global power dynamics.
So less about traditional free trade, maybe, and more about these targeted strategic trade blocks.
Kind of, yeah. Economists are calling it a reinvigoration of global trade, saying it'll ease business uncertainty.
But there are critics, right, warning that such a huge influx of foreign investment, it could distort certain economic sectors. What's the worry there?
That's right. I mean, while the capital influx is good, the concern is that foreign investment, if it's not managed carefully, can sometimes favor specific industries or regions, maybe in ways that don't quite align with broader national economic goals, could create imbalances, and looking bigger picture, lots of analysts expect a kind of domino effect from this, setting the stage for similar deals down the line as nations look to cement alliances through economics.
And speaking of major trade pacts, Indian Prime Minister Modi was in London on July 23rd, negotiating a big free trade agreement with UK PM Keir Starmer, and meeting King Charles, too.
Yeah, that agreement's expected to be signed, July 24th. It promises tariff cuts, wider market access, services expansion, investment incentives, the usual FTA stuff.
But the focus seems to be on deeper strategic ties. Both leaders mentioned that, and countering China's economic influence.
Definitely. That shared interest is pretty explicit. It's another clear example of trade being used as a tool for, geopolitical maneuvering.
But, like any big deal, there are critics, domestically, in both India and the UK, concerns about labor standards, regulatory standards. Are those concerns mostly about, competition driving standards down? Or something else?
It's often a mix. But yeah, a key worry can be that increased market access might lead to a sort of race to the bottom on labor or environmental rules if one country's standards are seen as lower, creates an uneven playing field.
Okay, let's pivot from international economics to, another big economic play, but in the media world. Fascinating news here. A report on July 23rd says ESPN is in advanced talks.
Yes. The NFL Red Zone and NFL Network acquisition for about $2 billion.
That's the one. And good news for fans. Apparently, Scott Hansen is expected to stay on as the Red Zone host.
Right. Its potential deal, it would significantly expand ESPN's dominance in live sports. Huge impact on broadcast rights, ad revenue, the whole industry, really. It's a massive consolidation move.
And media analysts seem to see it aligning with ESPN's pay TV strategy long term.
Yeah.
But it's also raising some serious antitrust concerns, right?
Yep.
Network consolidation.
Absolutely.
For fans, it sounds like a mixed bag. Maybe integrated offerings are good, but fear of less choice, higher subscription costs. What's your take on the fan side?
Yeah, it's that classic double-edged sword, isn't it? On one hand, maybe it's simpler having everything under one roof, easier access, but if it kills competition, there's less incentive for innovation or, competitive pricing.
Right.
Which usually means higher costs for consumers down the road.
Right. Okay, now let's shift to some big domestic policy changes and societal shifts here in the U.S. On July 23rd, the Trump administration launched AI.gov.
And unveiled the comprehensive America's AI Action Plan. Yeah, aimed at boosting U.S. competitiveness, particularly against China in the AI space, and setting out a regulatory strategy.
It looks pretty expansive, over 90 federal policy actions, grouped into 3 pillars.
That's right. Accelerating innovation, building domestic infrastructure, and leading in international AI diplomacy and security. It's trying to be a holistic approach to this incredibly fast-moving field.
And the plan promises to remove regulatory barriers, speed up new data centers, promote exports of American AI tech, and it also ties federal procurement to what they call ideological neutrality in AI models. Now, ideological neutrality, that sounds straightforward, but what are the nuances there, especially given the mixed reactions?
That's a really sharp question because, well, on one hand, the idea is to prevent government AI systems from showing political or social biases, which sounds reasonable, right? But critics worry that concept is, well, open to interpretation. Could it create a chilling effect on certain AI research or even self-censorship in development, especially around tackling systemic bias in data itself? It's tricky.
Yeah, definitely tricky. And the initial industry responses were mixed, weren't they? Tech leaders cheering fewer regulations.
Seeing it as a boost for global competitiveness.
But civil rights groups warning about increased risks, discrimination, misinformation, unchecked corporate power.
Exactly. And internationally, countries like China, many in the EU, they generally favor tighter AI rules, so they've expressed concern about the U.S. approach. It really highlights these diverging global views on how to govern AI.
Okay, shifting now to environmental policy. Big news here, too. July 23rd, the EPA formally announced it intends to rescind its 2009 endangerment finding.
Right, and for the last 15 years, that finding has been the kind of scientific and legal foundation for federal regulation of greenhouse gas emissions.
So what exactly was that finding, and why is pulling it back so significant?
Basically, the endangerment finding was the EPA's official determination, based on scientific consensus at the time, that greenhouse gases do endanger public health and welfare. That gave the agency the legal authority to regulate them under the Clean Air Act. So the administration's argument now is that those regulations have unduly stifled economic growth and innovation.
But the opposition sounds pretty fierce. Environmental groups, scientists, even some industry voices warning it could unravel decades of protections, undermine U.S. credibility on climate change.
Extremely strong opposition. They argue it ignores established science, and yes, the potential impact is huge.
And the reactions are polarized, you said. Business groups welcoming relief, but environmental groups and several states vowing court challenges.
Highly polarized, yes. Business associations see potential relief from compliance costs. Environmental groups in some states are gearing up for legal battles, absolutely.
And the international angle, what's the fallout looking like there?
Well, international observers are watching closely. They've noted this reversal could significantly weaken U.S. commitments under climate accords. It might alter the global momentum towards decarbonization. It sends a powerful signal about the U.S. stance.
Okay, another significant domestic policy shift. The U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee announced a new policy on July 23rd, banning trans women from women's Olympic sports.
Right. Following President Trump's recent Executive Order 14201 on this, the rule itself, interestingly, avoids the word transgender but cites Title IX compliance.
And some sports bodies, like USA Fencing and Swimming, are already adjusting their rules.
They are. It's moving quickly. And this issue is just deeply polarizing. The viewpoints are starkly divided.
Wow, so
Well, critics, like the National Women's Law Center, argue it politicizes fairness, goes against supportive scientific studies, and increases marginalization for trans athletes. On the other side, advocates of the ban say it's necessary to protect cis female athletes' competitive fairness. It really puts a spotlight on this growing friction point in sports and society more broadly.
And you have to imagine this decision just fuels those broader policy debates, especially with the 2028 LA Olympics on the horizon. This will definitely be front and center. Okay, moving now to some really pressing humanitarian concerns and other striking headlines from the day. The situation in Gaza, it sounds like it's getting even worse.
Tragically, yes. On July 23rd, over 100 humanitarian organizations, Amnesty, Oxfam, Doctors Without Borders, among them, issued a dire warning. Conditions have deteriorated to mass starvation. Markets empty, sanitation services collapsed.
And the Gaza Ministry of Health is reporting actual starvation-linked deaths.
At least 111 starvation-linked deaths, according to their report. And adding to this awful picture, the World Health Organization released footage, also on July 23rd.
What did it show?
Israeli forces detaining WHO staff and their family at gunpoint, right at the WHO facility in Gaza. The WHO is calling for their immediate release, stressing their neutrality, stressing this person is vital to UN relief efforts.
Wow, that sounds like a critical point for international aid. What are the implications if humanitarian access, personnel safety, if those aren't guaranteed?
It makes delivering aid almost impossible. It just compounds an already desperate crisis. We're seeing growing international condemnation protests, even in Tel Aviv. Experts are calling for an urgent ceasefire, aid corridors, stressing that famine would violate international humanitarian law. When aid gets blocked and aid workers are targeted, it just undermines the basic principles of international cooperation and causes immense suffering.
Switching to another urgent environmental story, these heat waves. Italy and Greece were hit by a searing heat wave, apparently claiming multiple lives by July 23rd.
Yes, prompting red zone warnings, school closures, cooling centers being set up, really extreme conditions.
And simultaneously, there's a severe U.S. heat wave, putting millions at risk across the South and Midwest.
That's right. Emergency services mobilizing, cooling centers, health advisories, the whole response. And experts are being very explicit, connecting this extreme heat to climate change, urging resilience measures, sustainable policies.
And it's not just the heat, is it? There are also ongoing wildfires out west.
Multiple large wildfires across western states, threatening communities, really stretching firefighting resources thin. It adds urgency to calls for better wildfire management, absolutely. It just drives home how frequent and intense these events are becoming.
Okay, let's maybe end on a slightly lighter note, or at least unexpected. July 23rd, Madame Tussauds unveiled 13 Taylor Swift wax figures.
Ah, yes. From iconic looks on her Eras tour. It's actually the museum's largest multi-figure launch ever, displayed across 13 cities, 4 continents.
Wow, how long did that take?
Over 40 artists spent 14 months crafting them, a real tribute to her massive cultural impact.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How she's become this global phenomenon worthy of such an elaborate display.
It really is something. And finally, a sad note for music fans everywhere. The world mourned on July 23rd, following the death of rock icon Ozzy Osbourne. He was 76.
Such a monumental legacy. Founding member of Black Sabbath, huge solo career.
Right.
Really shaped heavy metal for, what, half a century? Absolutely. His farewell tour just wrapped up right, with final Black Sabbath shows, culminating July 22nd at Villa Park.
And raising an incredible amount for charity too, $140 million.
Amazing. Tributes are just pouring in, aren't they? Fellow musicians, public figures, fans, remembering him as the Prince of Darkness, a true legend.
Genre-defining force, definitely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's really clear that the events of July 23rd, 2025, they paint such a vivid picture. A world grappling with huge economic shifts, profound policy debates, urgent humanitarian challenges. Each story, when you unpack it, just reveals layers of complexity and how interconnected everything is.
Absolutely. You know, from those boardrooms shaping global trade to the quiet heroism of aid workers in crisis zones, even the surprising cultural tributes, these nuggets of knowledge, they're just crucial for understanding this rapidly evolving landscape. We really hope this deep dive has given you that clarity, that sense of being truly informed.
And if we try and connect all this back to a bigger picture, thinking about everything we discussed today, it raises, I think, an important question. In a world where national interests so often seem to collide with global standards, how do leaders balance that desire for, say, economic growth and national security with those universal principles of human rights and environmental stewardship.
That is a powerful thought to leave you with. And it resonates across so many of these stories, doesn't it? Until next time, keep digging deeper.